How to teach noun to primary grade children video series number 9. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel where we dive into fun and effective teaching strategies for the classroom. Today we are exploring a hands-on activity called What's in the Bag. This activity is perfect for helping young students identify and understand nouns in a fun and interactive way. Nouns are one of the first building blocks of language that children learn, and what's in the bag is a great way to reinforce this concept. Whether you are teaching in person or online, this activity can easily be adapted to fit your needs. Let's get started. The premise of the premise of what's in the bag is simple yet powerful. You fill a bag with various objects, and one by one, students pull out an object, name it, and identify it as a noun. This tactile approach helps solidify their understanding of what a noun is in a very concrete way. All you need is a bag and some everyday objects. These could be anything from a pencil to a toy, a car, or a book. The key is to have a variety of items that represent different types of nouns: people, places, things, and even animals. This activity engages student senses and makes learning nouns a lot more interactive. It's particularly effective for young learners who benefit from physical manipulation of objects. Plus, it encourages participation and speaking skills as students describe what they have found in the bag. Let's go over how to set up and run this activity in your classroom. First, gather a selection of objects and place them in a bag. You'll want to choose items that are familiar to the students but also varied enough to keep things interesting. For example, you could include a spoon, a doll, a leaf, a block, and a piece of fruit. Next, explain the activity to the students. Tell them that they'll take turns reaching into the bag, pulling out an object and showing it to the class. Their job is to name the object and then identify it as a noun. For younger students, you might need to remind them what a noun is, person, place, thing, or animal. To keep the activity organized, you could have students form a line and take turns, or you could pass the bag around in a circle. Encourage them to speak clearly when naming the object and identifying it as a noun. This not only reinforces their understanding but also helps build confidence in speaking in front of the class. Sometimes students might pull an object and be unsure of what it is and or what to call it. If this happens, use it as a teaching moment. Guide them by asking questions like what do you use this for, or where have you seen this before. This can help them make connections and figure out the noun on their own. After everyone has had a turn, it's important to review the activity. This is where you can reinforce the learning and make sure everyone has grasped the concept of nouns. Start by discussing the different types of nouns that were pulled from the bag. Ask questions like which of these objects represent nouns, or did anyone pull out an object that represents a person or an animal? This encourages students to think how diverse nouns can be. Get the class involved by asking them to share what they found most surprising or interesting. For instance, you might ask, did anyone pull out an object they have never seen before, or how did you figure out what to call it? This not only promotes discussion but also helps students learn from each other's experiences. So, as you review, be sure to provide positive feedback and gentle corrections if needed. If a student misidentifies an object or struggles with a concept, take the time to explain it again in a way that's easy for them to understand. This ensures that everyone is on the same page before moving on. After the review, it's a good idea to reflect on the activity as a class. Ask your students questions like, what did you learn about nouns today, or was there a noun that you found particularly interesting? This reflection helps reinforce what they have learned and encourages them to think critically about the activity. To extend the activity, you could ask students to draw a picture of their favorite object from the bag and label it with its noun. Alternatively, you could have them write a short sentence using a noun they pulled out, which helps reinforce their understanding of how nouns function in sentences. The What's in the Bag activity is versatile and can be adapted for different age groups and skill levels. For younger students, you might include more familiar and basic objects, while for older students, you could introduce abstract nouns or more complex items. For example, with older students, you could include items that represent proper nouns or have them guess the noun without looking at the object. This adds an element of challenge and encourages deeper thinking about language. Whether you are working with the younger students who are just being introduced to nouns or older students who need a fresher, this activity can be easily adapted to suit different learning levels. Let's jump in and explore how you can bring this activity to life in your classroom. In the What's in the Bag activity, you will fill a bag with a variety of everyday objects. These can be anything from a pencil, a toy car, or to a piece of fruit. The goal is for students to pull out an object, name it, and identify it as a noun. The purpose of this activity is to help students recognize that nouns are all around them, representing the people, places, things they encounter daily. By physically interacting with objects and naming them, the students can better grasp the concept of nouns in a tangible way. Let's take a look at some examples. You could include items like spoon, a book, or even a small plant. The key is to have a diverse range of objects that represent different types of nouns. To set up the activity, start by selecting a variety of objects, placing them into the bag. You might want to choose objects that are familiar to the students as well as a few that might be new to them. This adds an element of surprise and curiosity to the activity. Once your bag is ready, gather the students in a circle or in front of the class. Explain that each student will take turns reaching into the bag, pulling out an object and naming it. After they name the object, they should identify it as a noun. For example, if they pull out a ball, they would say, "This is a ball," and it is a noun because it is a thing. As students participate, it's important to create a supportive and encouraging environment. Remind them that it's okay if they don't know the name of an object in the right way. You can guide by asking questions like, "What do you think this is used for?" or "Have you seen this before?" This helps build their confidence and reinforces their learning. To extend the activity, you can ask students to describe the object they pulled out. For example, they might say, "This is a red ball, it's small and bouncy." This not only reinforces their understanding of nouns but also encourages them to think about adjectives and descriptive language. After everyone has had a turn, it's time to review the objects that were pulled from the bag. This part of the activity is crucial for reinforcing the concept of nouns and ensuring that students have understood the lesson. Start by asking the class to recall the objects that were pulled out. You might say, "Who remembers what was in the bag?" Let's list the objects together. As they list the objects, write them on the board under the heading nouns. This visual aid helps solidify the idea that all the objects they encountered are nouns. Encourages students to discuss why each object is a noun. Ask questions like, "Why is a pencil a noun? Can anyone think of other nouns that are similar to the ones we found?" This kind of peer interaction promotes deeper understanding and allows students to learn from each other. Be sure to provide feedback during this discussion. If a student is unsure about why an object is a noun, guide them through the reasoning process. For example, you could say, "Remember, a noun is a person, place, or thing. Is a ball a person? No. Is it a place? No. So, what does that leaves us with? A thing, which makes it a noun." This is also a great opportunity to introduce new vocabulary. If an object is unfamiliar to the students, take a moment to explain what it is and how it fits into the category of nouns. This enriches their vocabulary while reinforcing the lesson. Once you have reviewed all the objects, take a moment to reflect on the activity with your students. Ask them questions like, "What did you learn about nouns today? Was there an object that surprised you?" This helps them process what they have learned and gives you insight into their understanding. To extend the activity, you could have students bring in their own objects from home for the next class. This personalizes the experience and gives them a sense of ownership over their learning. Alternatively, you could introduce a writing component where students write sentences using nouns they identified. This reinforces their understanding and helps them apply what they have learned in context. The What's in the Bag activity can be adapted for different age groups and skill levels. For younger students, you might use simpler objects and provide more guidance during the naming process. For older students, you could introduce more abstract nouns and challenge them to categorize the objects further, such as by size, shape, color, or function. For example, with older students, you could add a twist by having them sort the objects into the categories like living and non living or made by humans and natural. This adds complexity to the activity and encourages critical thinking. If you are working with a larger class or older students, consider turning this into a group activity. Each group could be responsible for identifying and categorizing a set of objects, then presenting their findings to the class. This promotes collaboration and allows for deeper exploration of the concepts. And that's how you can implement the What's in the Bag activity in your classroom. This hands on interactive exercise is a fantastic way to help students identify and understand nouns, making grammar lessons more engaging and memorable. I encourage you to give this activity a try with your students. It's fun and effective way to reinforce the concept of nouns, and it's easily adaptable to different age groups and learning levels. So thank you so much for listening. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more teaching tips and activities. I would love to hear how the what's in the bag activity worked in your classroom. So feel free to share your experience in the comments below. So until next time, keep inspiring young minds and happy teaching.